On today's Locked On Senators, we've got a game day preview at 7 o'clock tonight. The Sens will take on the Lightning in Tampa.
And we'll talk about how impactful the Belleville Senators win over the Toronto Marlies is for their playoff hopes.
All that plus a couple mailbag questions on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1022 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Terms and conditions apply. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, lockedon.senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Thursday, April 11th, and Pilsy, the surest sign of spring. The Masters is starting today. We've got NHL playoff races. It is such an amazing time of year, and I feel like the Squidward SpongeBob meme where I'm just watching up in a dark tower, everybody else having fun.
Yeah, Ross, we've been locked in that tower watching everyone else have fun for 7 years now. So much to the point, Ross, that the most playoff adjacent thing that we've attached ourselves to is our Sens Abroad theme, where we pick players that used to play for the Sens that are now playing in the playoffs, and we follow them as we go along because we don't even get to sniff the NHL playoffs as Sens fans.
Well, we're going to see lots of them in Tampa. They added Anthony Duclair. They already had Tyler Mott. I know Austin Watson won't be in the lineup tonight, but he's a part of this team as well. Not to mention, or maybe I'm building up to, Nick Paul, who, as we're doing research on today's show, this guy's got 24 goals on the year.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
pretty impressive.
I mean, Nick Paul does it all. We know that, Ross. Come on.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I mean, they're always going to be attached to the hip. Mathieu Joseph, such a hot start to the season. But ironically, as he was elevated into a role where, you know, you're playing with Giroux and Stützle every night, the line for Ottawa, by the way, this season that's played the most. And the offense just dried up. No points in the last 8 games.
Yeah.
We could go back to the last 15 games where he has 4 points. We could go back since the last time they were in Tampa. And maybe this is what they need to spark Mathieu Joseph to go into the offseason with a little bit of an offensive push. Remember, he had those 2 goals. He was sick. He was looking really fast and playing well. He has 1 goal in 26 games since that night.
Yeah.
So you want to see a bit more from Mathieu Joseph. But look, at this point in the season, Pilsy, you mentioned you're doing the screenshots for the lineups. Like, last game was a picture perfect. Maybe that's the opposite of what I want to say, but it was a very tough lineup. When your old fourth line that you're like, hey, that's a decent fourth line with Kastelik, Kachuk, and Kelly. Well, now that is the entirety of your third line, and you have 3 call-ups on the fourth line.
Yeah, it's not great here. Like we said, the Ottawa Senators are finishing this season running on fumes. The tank is empty. They're calling guys up that are kind of barely moving the needle here for the Sens. So it's not going to be an easy task, this roster up against the Tampa Bay Lightning's roster.
No, it's not. And it's just unfortunate because it's just like the depth is disintegrated out of this team. And we don't know the status of Tim Stützle. He's been skating in a non-contact uniform. Look, I've said it time and time again. If you're going to stink on the road. And if Tim Stützle could play tonight, But if he doesn't, then he could have a strong probability of playing Saturday in front of the home fans for the closing home game of the season against Montreal, a team that always kind of brings the best out of him and puts him on a pedestal. Thanks for doing that, Habs fans. We appreciate that. Always a more fun atmosphere to do it at home in the last game. So I'm kind of hoping that Tim Stützle sits out tonight's game. There's no need for him to go from non-contact jersey at practice yesterday to in the lineup tonight. And what it also does, and I decided this about a month ago, where the rest of this season is just a getting stronger, learning the league run for Ridly Greig.
Yep.
And I think him playing in a top 6 role for this game at least and the last couple, I think it's just going to help him going forward. So the way that the lines, we expect them to go tonight, and the Senators are having an optional morning skate at 11:30 a.m. We're recording this at 10:45 a.m. Eastern time. We've got Shane Pinto on a line with Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson, Ridly Greig with Mathieu Joseph and Claude Giroux, and I mentioned the bottom 6 already, Casti, Tkachuk, Kelly, and then Yuri Smejkal with Boko Imama and Zach McEwen. On defense, Jake Sanderson and Artem Zub, Jacob Chikrin with JBD, and Thomas Chabot with Eric Brandstrom. No word yet on who starts in goal. I lean Korpisalo. I think Forsberg's probably only going to get one of those 2 games against New York and Boston, the back-to-back to end the year, but we will see. Pillsy, your locked-on player to watch.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to go with Korpisalo as well, Ross. My locked-on player, we've already touched on him, so I won't go too in-depth here, but it's going to be Mathieu Joseph, number 21 for the Ottawa Senators. Sure, all the storylines are there, going up against his old team. Ross mentioned it. He's been in one heck of a goal drought recently, and you hope that sparking up that rivalry up against the team that traded you away will help out. And this is a team where Mathieu Joseph, I think, can really use his speed to his advantage, and I want to see him using that speed. Obviously, goes without saying, you want him to use it to score goals, duh. But I more want him to use that speed to be able to set up guys like Claude Giroux, to be able to help Ridly Greig. Those two have had nice chemistry throughout the year, Joseph and Greig. So I want the speed to be a support system for the other guys on his line, and especially be an offensive threat when it comes to being on the penalty kill.
4 goals in 5 games against his former team. So there's a good sign in and of itself. He's got an assist as well. So point per game player since being traded from Tampa for Nick Paul, who has 24 goals on the year. I don't know if I mentioned that already. The Tampa Bay Lightning just seem like the type of team that will not go away. We thought at the start of the year that they were the team that could be vulnerable because they didn't have Vasilevsky for the first 2 months of the season, and they didn't have Vasilevsky in top form until recently. On the other side, we will discuss the Tampa Bay Lightning, but first, I'll give you my locked-on player to watch. I'm going to go with Ridly Greig. I know I already discussed him, so I was kind of pausing, seeing if I could come up with someone else. There's not a whole lot of intrigue outside of that. Sure, Brady Tkachuk's 1 goal away from tying his career high. That's a storyline we're going to be watching. Drake Batherson, can he get to 30 goals? I don't know if he's got 3 more in him. We'll see. But Ridly Greig, to me, is a guy who I just want him to play physical and confident. And he did that against Florida, going after a guy twice his size, basically, in Nico Mikkola. He hung on for dear life in the fight. Maybe it's in and of itself, but he played over 21 minutes in the loss to New Jersey. Not the last 2 games, but the one before that. I believe it was the first one that Timmy missed, if I'm not mistaken. So look, Ridley's got 26 points on the season, 68 games, and for me, it's just about getting stronger, and he'll have to do just that. And we know young centers struggle in the dot, but sitting at 43% on the season, it has been better of late. He's won 7 of his last 11 draws, so well above 500 in the last couple games. Hopefully, he can have a strong end to the season, because next summer, I'm still going to be saying that, Pillsy, that the Senators have strong center depth if everybody's healthy. The only problem is that big if. And it just has not happened that we've seen Tim Stützle, Josh Norris, Ridly Greig, and Shane Pinto in the same lineup often enough.
Yeah, it has not happened often enough. I know, Ross, you've got that stat of the Sens record when Pinto, Norris, and Stützle are together. I'm sure the record when all four of them together is even less games and probably maybe even more impressive.
The record with Stützle, Norris, Pinto is 25, 13, and 3, which would probably be battling for third spot in the division with Tampa. You'd probably be head-to-head with them if that's your points percentage. Unfortunately, as you just heard there, it hasn't happened often enough. But the Senators, they only have 4 games left on the season, Pilsy, so we're hoping for entertainment at the very least. Senators in Tampa taking on the Lightning at 7 o'clock. My parents will be boots on the ground, so maybe they've got that pixie dust because they're 3-0, 2-0 so far this season at games. They went with us against, who'd they play?
Tampa.
And then they were at the absolute beatdown over Washington the next game, and they took the GLEBE Central Pub Shuttle to that one and had an absolute blast. They actually took the GLEBE Central Pub Shuttle to both because we did on Tampa as well. The GLEBE Central Pub, absolute beauties. Love them. Make sure to go support them. They support us, and that is a beautiful thing here for the city of Ottawa. One day this team will be great, and they're going to have to get 2 buses to take everyone to the
It'll be a limo by that point, Ross. It'll be the GLEBE Central limo.
Amazing. On the other side, we'll look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll get into the Belleville Sens and the mailbag. We posted it on Twitter at Sens Central. I was expecting just a couple questions. Pilsy, no prep, no problem. We got about 10 questions coming your way, rapid fire style. We'll end the show off with that. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It is your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Factor. Eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes, that's it. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, vegan, and veggie. So you got lots of different options. Also discover more than 60 add-ons every week, like breakfast, on-the-go, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and fuel up for your springtime goals. You get chef-prepared meals on the table in 2 minutes. Looking for gourmet meals? Well, try the feature with premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, I know Ross is a big shrimp guy, truffle butter, broccolini, and asparagus. No fuss, no mess. Factor eliminates the hassle of prepping, cooking, and cleaning up. Simply heat up and savor the good stuff. It's tailored to your schedule so you can customize weekly meals with flexibility to get as much or as little as you need. Pause or reschedule deliveries to suit your lifestyle. Factor is your solution for fast premium meals without the need for cooking. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next box. That's code LockedOnNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. Check it out today, guys. Factor.
All right, Pilsy, here we are on a Senators game day, and it's kind of sad, but I'm going to spin zone it. It's a good thing that I wish it was a Belleville Sens game day, because Belleville has been absolutely buzzing. 4 straight wins, and now they've earned the right to control their own destiny. We're going to talk to our guy Footy. We'll get some more B-Sens on for you. I still want to catch up with Pistol Pete since he's come over, because obviously it's such an adjustment. He drew a huge penalty last night in the game, a high sticking penalty, and I know you and I both watched most of that game. I watched the replay of it as well. We'll get into that a little bit later. Let's finish the game day preview in Tampa, though. 7 o'clock start. The Lightning just will not go away, and I think I'm going to be rooting for them in the first round, and you will too, you citizens out there, you sickos. You know why? Because if Boston loses early, we might get 1 or 2 picks higher with their draft pick. So let's go Bolts. The Bolts were expected to line up as follows. Braden Point, the quietest 50 goal scorer last year, already up to his old tricks again. We'll tell you more on that in just a minute. Anthony Duclair, remember him? How about going from the San Jose Sharks to align with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov, the NHL's points leader, with 139. 139. Pillsy, do some quick math while I'm reading off the rest of the lines. If you take the Senators' top 2-point getters, do they have 139?
Oh, boy. Let's see.
Second line is Anthony Cirelli with Brandon Hagel and Steven Stamkos. Nick Paul is centering Mikey Asimont and Mitchell Chafee. And then Luke Glendening is between Tyler Mott and Tanner Jeannot. On the back end, Victor Hedman with Darren Radish. Nick Perbix is with Eric Chernak. And Timothy, is it Timothy? No, that's Liljegren. There's no way it's Timothy Lilyberg and Matt Dumba.
His name?
Emil.
Yes, that's it.
Emil Lilyberg and Matt Dumba. Andre Vasilevsky starts in goal. Pillsy, your sound effects make me think that it's close.
What was the number? 139?
139 for Nikita Kucherov points.
This is no joke. If you add the Ottawa Senators' top point getters, Tim Stützle with 70 and Brady Tkachuk with 68, you come to a grand total of 138. 1 point less than Nikita Kucherov. Wow.
Oh, that is so funny. I'm going to tweet that out once we get to your next ad break. But that is all-time, Pillsy. What is that more? An indictment on the Senators or Nikita Kucherov's just absolute brilliance? Because there's three guys at the top of the NHL's point leaders that are so far ahead of everybody. Like Panarin has 115 points, and he's like 15 off the pace of these guys.
Yeah. It's nuts how the top echelon players are breaking through here. To answer your question, Ross, I'd say it's more a nod to how good Kucherov has been. Now, a lot of people, the Hart conversation is hot in the streets these days, are saying, look, Kucherov gets a lot of his points on the power play, so you got to diminish that, which, you know what, I hear that argument, but at the same time, what he's doing is absolutely insane, so I'm not about to diminish what Kucherov is doing. And you know, for the Sens to have a couple guys in the 70-point range, sure, you'd love to have at least one player at a point per game pace above 82 points, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible.
Nikita Kucherov is outstanding. 96 assists so far this season, 43 goals, and that doesn't even lead the team because Braden Point has 44 goals. They have 2 40-goal scorers on their team.
Almost 3.
And if Steven Stamkos didn't have a lesser start to the season, he would already be there. He had a hat trick in his last game. Do you know how many goals he has recently?
Oh, he's been lighting it up.
Yeah, I looked this up recently. I'm just going to confirm so that I'm not sounding out of pocket. He's on a 6-game goal streak.
Nice.
He has 10 goals more. This is absolutely absurd. And by the way, there is a question coming about Steven Stamkos in our mailbag, and I didn't write it in, Pillsy. I know I've been talking to you off air. I did not write this in. In Stevens, I mean, he's got a couple 2-goal games, even just a little further on. It is a 6-game goal streak, but in that, he has a hat trick and 2 2-goal performances. So that's 10 goals in his last 6 games, 12 points.
Decent. However, Ross,
lookout player.
He is not my lookout player. My lookout player is going to be Anthony Duclair. Sens abroad. # Sens abroad, Anthony Duclair. This guy's career has been so crazy. We were talking about it before the show, Ross. Starts off with the Rangers, goes to the Coyotes, goes to the Blackhawks for a hot minute, goes to Columbus for a hot minute, comes to Ottawa, has success. Then we'll remember the Ottawa Senators did not give him a qualifying offer. That was one of the most shocking moves ever. I think everybody just assumed that was going to happen. And then he decides, you know what? I'm not about to give an agent a percentage of my contract here. He negotiates his deal with the Panthers without an agent. Then he signs a new deal with the Panthers, goes to the Sharks, and now traded from the Sharks to the Lightning. And oh yeah, he's 28 years old, and he's already been through all of this in his career. But it's made him a decent player because he's had to adjust his game. And we talked about it, Ross. Imagine being Anthony Duclair going from the San Jose Sharks to now being on a line with Point and Kucherov. Your game is about to change, and he has had success in 14 games with the Lightning since the trade. He has 12 points, 6 goals, 6 assists, including a 2-game point streak. He had an assist last game and a goal up against Pittsburgh the game before. So Anthony Duclair is probably going to keep things rolling here if he's able to stay on that line with Braden Point and Kucherov. So I'm going to be looking out for him, Ross.
Very well said, and I'm cheering for him as well because he didn't have the strongest playoff last year. He was a part of the Florida Panthers who went to the Stanley Cup final, but he was kind of on the outside looking in and had a diminished role throughout that run.
I mean, 11 points in 20 games isn't bad in the playoffs.
What do you have, 1 or 2 goals, though?
I'm flicking through tabs here. 4 goals in 20
4
games.
goals. Okay. All right. Not the end of the world, but I think that now, I bet
he got hurt near the end, though, didn't he? He was part of that crew that was just the skeleton crew for the Panthers by the finals.
Right. Well, I'll bet he has more than 4 goals with Tampa. I think that's a fun bet. I bet you have more 4 goals in Tampa this playoffs. My lookout player, we already talked about him, so I'll just mention it briefly, is Steven Stamkos. Maybe I'll give you something else because we already hit you with the 10 goals in his last 6 game stat. Andre Vasilevsky is tied for the most wins among all goalies in the National Hockey League since the trade deadline. He is 9-2-1 over that span, and he is just playing the way that I'm sure he expects of himself. He's coming off a huge performance, and since the trade deadline, he has only given up more than 3 goals once. Wow. Pretty impressive stuff right now for Andre Vasilevsky and helping that team win. He's got a .918 save percentage over his last 10 starts. Not a guy who I'd want to be going up against in the first round of the playoffs. So keep an eye out for Andre Vasilevsky being at his top of his game at the right time. These veterans know how to heat up. Steven Stamkos, Andre Vasilevsky, 2-time Stanley Cup champions, and it's easy to understand why. On the other side, the Belleville Sens, 4 straight wins. We'll get into that. And the mailbag is filling up quickly. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team as well? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. Do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like assessment, virtual interviews, and matching. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in the search. Indeed does the hard work for you. Sit back, relax, sponsor a job, and they'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description right when you post. With Indeed, you can start hiring fast. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you got to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right, Pilsy. So I did post on Twitter at Sens Central, the NHL scoring leader updated. It's the scoring leaders that you didn't know you needed. The NHL was hiding this from us. Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk combined for 138 points. That is second in the National Hockey League, right between Nikita Kucherov and Nathan MacKinnon by 1 point. And great answer by Stützleson. It's a little combination between Stützle and Sanderson's names. And the Hart Trophy goes to Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk combined. And there's a gif of everyone standing up and going crazy at an award show. So great stuff there. Thanks for the laughs. And there's a lot of teams that would be in that situation. I think that, as we mentioned, the Kucherov, McKinnon, McDavid trio is just ridiculous. And the NHL is in such a good place. And I cannot wait one day, maybe to be a part of a playoff race because it looks like fun. Like Detroit's playing Pittsburgh tonight.
Yeah.
Enormous game. Huge swings. But we're going to have to settle for the Belleville Sens, who got a patented K-train hit last night. So that was absolutely unreal. Been a while since we've gotten the horn in. And it was Dylan Gambrell, a little hashtag Sens Abroad crime there.
Yeah, Tyler Kleven absolutely demolished Dylan Gambrell. And look, go watch the video yourself. It was a clean hit. There was no penalty on the play. Blandisi obviously didn't like it, so he immediately scraps with Kleven there. And I didn't like the linesman had Blandisi and Kleven down on the ground. Kleven was on the bottom of it, and Blandisi got one extra punch down on Kleven, and that's when Kleven's wires kind of crossed and he freaked out. So I don't blame him there. That was a bit of a cheap shot, but great to see Tyler Kleven finally having the confidence to lay out those big kind of hits, because that was the perfect time to do it, Ross. Gambrell came in to the offensive zone, head down, boom, separates the man from the puck. And if the Marlies weren't upset about a nice, good, clean hit, that would have been a transition play, and the puck goes the other way for the Ottawa Senators. So that's what you like to see from Tyler Kleven. And he showed, Ross, he's not just a big, mean shutdown defenseman. He's got some silky mitts, too, as he does the saucer pass that eventually goes to Wyatt Bongiovanni, and that's the overtime game winner. So massive, massive performance from the Belleville Senators, who were down 2-0 and ultimately clawed their way back for a 3-2 overtime win over the Marlies.
But who gets the horse, the workhorse of the game? It's Wyatt Bongiovanni, because not only did he get the OT winner 2 minutes into the extra frame, but the Belleville Senators were down 2-0 in this game. They got a great goal by Josh Curry to start things off. What a dish by Stephen Halliday, third AHL assist. And then in the third period, on the power play that I believe was drawn by Oscar Pettersson with that high sticking penalty, or no, that was in the second period that they got that one. It was a tripping penalty on Roni Hirvonen, who, funny enough, Leaf fans were all excited because they got Hirvonen and Niemela for Tyler Kleven, but Kleven had a great game. Niemela scored, I believe, as well. Did he?
He did score. Yeah.
Yeah. He had the first goal of the game there. But Wyatt Bongiovanni just came to play, man, and that's a huge sigh of relief for me, because look, all we have to judge Steve Staios, Ryan Bonus, their ability to assess talent is Wyatt Bongiovanni, Jamison Reese, and Boris Kachuk. Those are the only three external players that have been added to the organization this year. I laugh when I say it, but hey, Jamison Reese starting to figure it out in Belleville too. He's starting to get comfortable with his surroundings. I thought he had a nice game there the other night. I didn't notice him at all in this game. I don't even think. Oh no, he played.
I thought he was all right. He fit on the line nicely with Halliday. And Ross, if you'll allow me, this will be my Halliday rant. We knew he was going to be one of those guys. He was drafted as an overager. He's got the size. He's got the hockey IQ. So we knew at least he had the tools to be able to transition to the pro game. But it hasn't taken him very long to look comfortable here. Like, he had one shift before, and our guy, David Footy, at Footy on the air, check him out. He was calling this game, and he made a good point that the way Halliday is able to protect the puck as a young guy, just starting in the pro game, was incredible. He uses that frame. He's so smart. He was able, Hildeby, the Marlies goalie, tried to wrap that puck around to clear it. Halliday's right there, and heads up play to find Curry in front to score an easy goal. That was the assist Halliday had. So I really think Halliday's going to start popping off here. He's on that third line with Curry and Jamison Reese. I think those three players kind of highlight and benefit each other nicely. So I'm going to be keeping out an eye for Stephen Halliday as Belleville pushes further and further, closer and closer to the playoffs here, as they are now in a playoff position.
They're putting the gap further away. 2 points. The Belleville Sens are up on the Laval Rocket for the final playoff spot, and Belleville holds a game in hand. They'll take on Rochester on Friday night. Belleville's had some trouble with Rochester in the past, so I'm curious to see how that game's going to go. Both games, because they play at Blue Cross Arena in Rochester on Friday and Saturday. Then they've got Syracuse at home, and then a home and home against Laval. So it's in all likelihood going to come down to those last 2 games against Laval, but the Belleville Sens can control their own destiny. We'll be following this story as it develops. Pilsy, we got a mailbag, though. We know that people love getting in the mix on Twitter. You can follow us there at Sens Central. Make sure to turn the notifications on because you won't miss when we randomly just put up mailbag open. Ask the boys whatever you got. So let's scroll through here. And I don't check these.
I love doing these, so I'm stoked. Let's do it.
Kevin Hemina, of course, he's in the mix. Would you bring in Steven Stamkos if he doesn't re-sign with the Tampa Bay Lightning? Pilsy, I've got my tinfoil hat on. I know the Macedonian community in Southern Ontario, they have to be all tight, right?
I guess
I didn't even know what the Macedonian community was until recently. We got a DM tip saying, hey, you know Steve Stamkos is Macedonian? You know who else is? Chris Tanev. You know who else is? Steven Stamkos. So they're all coming to Ottawa.
All right, that works for me. If the question is, would you bring Steven Stamkos in? Absolutely. If the question is that realistic? Absolutely not.
Boo. Don't bring realism into a mailbag.
Yeah, don't let facts get in the way of a good mailbag question.
Yeah.
I just, where would this cap space come from?
I don't know.
I don't know.
But it's a great idea, Kevin. I
would love it. I would love it. Yeah, I would absolutely love it.
Liam at Eliaminators. Liaminators with an E at the front. Out of all the players expected to go to free agency, who are the top 3 that you would target currently, and what sort of term and AAV would you offer them? I think that, Liam, this might be a question more for after the season, because admittedly, if I'm spending time looking at things this right now, it's the draft versus free agency, and then we'll get into what the Sens need, because I think the bigger questions for the Ottawa Senators is, are they going to use the buyout window right after the Stanley Cup final? That will tell you what kind of cap they have. But I'm spending some on a goalie, probably through trade. The free agency market, you end up giving more term. We've seen that time and time again. I think you have to figure out the goaltending. And I'm sure there's another question here that will address goaltending. But Pilsy, are there any free agents that you have your eye on right now?
The first guy that came to mind, and maybe that's just because you mentioned him, Ross, but
Steven Stamkos?
Yeah, not Steven Stamkos. Chris Tanev. I mean, that would be a guy that, if you have your top 4 right-hand shot D being Zub and Tanev, complemented by Sanderson and Shabbat, I think that's the perfect yin and yang. Now, the issue is, we do know that Tanev did not waive his no move clause to come to Ottawa. They tried to get him and he said, nah, I'm good. So maybe I'll spin zone that, Ross, and say he just wanted to go to a contender for the rest of this season. And maybe if you put the right money in, he would be enticed to come to Ottawa as a free agent.
Okay, good answer there. Thank you for the question, Liam. Ryan Madden, who is the biggest surprise this season and who made the biggest impact that's not a top 6 outside of Pinto? Okay, Ryan. So not a top 6 player, because to me, the 2 biggest surprises this season, one, I knew that Drake Batherson had talent. I think one of my hot takes was that he was going to be a point per game guy. So I can't be surprised at him being a solid player. I'll go with Artem Zub. I think Zub is settled in. And who had Artem Zub leading all Sens defensemen in 5-on-5 points this year?
Not me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Or is it kind of sad?
No, it's incredible.
It's incredible. So I'm going to go with Artem Zub, a guy who, to me, the best thing that came out of this year is Jake Sanderson and Artem Zub can be a top shutdown pair. They're 5th in expected goals percentage of any D pair that's played over, I believe, 500 minutes together. And there's some really good pairs up there. So that to me is the biggest surprise or the biggest impact.
Yeah. So using the term top 6 in the Ottawa Senators world is a very gray area. So I'll say originally he wasn't supposed to be in the top 6 when Tarasenko was here, Norris was healthy, etc. I'll say the biggest surprise for me, and we've already spent a lot of time talking about him, so we won't go too in depth, but Matthew Joseph. This was a guy that we all wrote off. He had 3 goals last year, 0 even strength goals. So this was a guy, everyone, myself included, were saying he's got to be a part of a sweetener deal to get rid of the cap so you can sign Pinto. Just get rid of him. He's done here. It's not going to work out. And he goes from 3 goals and 15 assists to 11 goals and 24 assists this season, mind you, 12 more games. So obviously that's going to help. But this has been one of his best years since his rookie season, where he had 26 points. He's got 35 here. All other seasons, he finishes less than 20 points on the year. So you got to, the season he combined Tampa and Ottawa, right, he did have 30 points there. But what I'm saying is this is going to be a career year for Matthew Joseph, and that really surprised me.
And he missed some games too, right? And he came back. He hasn't really been the same player before. Not that you expect him to be almost a point per game like he was, but only 5 goals in the last 43 games is something that I think could work on. Minus 14 over that span. But I think if you could split the difference of his first half and second half and find a common ground, like he's a guy that at his cap hit, good deal. So good call there. Pilsy. All right, at Sens on Dubes, if you were steady Stevie Staios, what's the first move you would make, and would you do it before the draft? The first move I would make is to hire a head coach.
Yeah, that's probably priority number one, just because you want your head coach in place so you know kind of how to not build a team around him, because if you get stuck building a team around a coach and you fire him a year or two later, that's not great. So you don't want to build around him, but you want to have him in the mix and have his input for what type of team he's looking for that he could find success with. It's kind of like you got to give a chef all the right ingredients. So you got to get the ingredients in the chef. You got to get it all prepared so you can make a nice meal at the end of things here.
Our guy, Sean Shields, says, what do you think this team needs to take the next step? Do you feel comfortable going into next season with Korpisalo and Forsberg? Sean, I got to be honest with you. I've been looking at the buyout calendar for both of them. And I think that there's a world where you just buy out both of them. It would cost you about $1.1 million next year. Sure, beyond that with Korpisalo is a little long.
Yep.
But I just do not see a world where those guys can get you to the playoffs.
Yeah, they need to figure out goaltending, so that goes hand in hand with this question. And no, I do not feel comfortable going Corpy and Forsberg. Ross, I don't believe the Sens will buy out Corpy this season. I think you got to give him one more chance to see if things work out before you do the buyout. But I think Forsberg, whether it's a trade with retained salary or a simple buyout for him, I don't believe that both these guys will be back. And I think Forsberg is going to be the odd man out.
Our guy, Tim Whalen. Are any of the players on Belleville going to make the jump to the big club this upcoming season? This might be a cheap answer because he's been up with Ottawa, but Tyler Clevin to me is going to be the 6th defenseman on the Sens next year.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think Crooker, although it's very unfortunate that he's had this injury that's kind of cut his tryout short, I think he's really impressed Jacques Martin and the rest of the crew here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Crooker get a bottom 6 role out of training camp next year.
Brent asks, are you guys nervous with all the things Staios has on his plate this offseason? Short answer, yes.
Okay, that was a very short answer. Yes. I'm a little bit nervous only because it's such a mix of, I feel like he has the pressure to do something big, but he also has the expectation, steady Stevie Staios, to be steady and not make rash decisions or make emotional decisions, kind of like what we saw Pierre Dorion did. So he needs to find that perfect middle ground of making big moves while not just making rash decisions, trying to make your team better right now. And
I don't want them going name chasing. I want it to be a guy where I'm like, I don't know much about that guy, and then have them come in and be good.
Yeah, so it's going to be fascinating to see how this management group tackles the offseason.
THG. Who do the Sens end up keeping, Shabbat or Chikrin? I feel like THG, we can do a full episode on this one, and we will come the end of the season. But appreciate the question. We will get to that, though, in detail after the end of the regular season, which is sneaking up. Big Bobby, what's the top thing that Michael Andlauer can do to improve the fan experience at the CTC? Good question, Bobby. I like the fact that, look, to me, the number one thing, and it's unfortunate because it's an impossibility in this building, but what we saw in Minnesota with the spacious concourse, that is, to me, the number one fan experience is how can you get around at intermission? Are you just shoulder to shoulder waiting to get to the washroom the entire intermission? that to me is the best way to improve fan experience, but it's hard. Like and they've tried adding, and you can see all the vendors that are like throughout, so you don't have to go to a specific concessions to get a beer. There's all these side vendors, which is good to cut down the lines, but it's impossible to do because the building is what it is, and the concourse isn't that big. So that to me is something that's not on him to fix. I think they're doing a good job in terms of the lighting. We haven't been back in the building since the lighting, though. I'm really looking forward. You have. Yep. You have. Did you have to wear your sunglasses? You bring your eclipse glasses inside?
Well, I have my bucket hat, so that helps any brightness there. But yeah, I think it did look nice. And Ross, with the new, talking about the spacious concourse, that's something we both noted in Minnesota. The new arena, I'm sure, will have that involved.
Brian asks,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I got to answer my question. What can they do to improve fan experience right now? Get Shawarma Palace in the CTC. Come on.
Yeah, love that. Shawarma Palace. I can't wait to eat Shawarma Palace this weekend. Carter Yakemchuk and Tij Iginla, a forward or defenseman, basically right shot defenseman Yakemchuk or Iginla, a forward. If those are the only two available at the pick, Pilsy, what's your answer?
I'm going Yakemchuk. Check out Scott Wheeler on The Athletic. He just did an article about Yakemchuk, and I think you got to go for that right-hand shot defenseman. If these are the two guys you're looking at, it's an easy choice for me.
It's close for me. It's a toss-up for me. I might lean Iginla. But I like Yakemchuk too. But I might lean Iginla. Terry asks, what's the greatest hockey movie of all time? You can't say Slapshot, and you should not say Mighty Ducks. Hey, Terry, don't tell me what I shouldn't say.
Is he suggesting that Mighty Ducks isn't worthy of that, or just it's too obvious of an answer?
Oh, I think he's saying it's not worthy.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Happy Gilmore and call it a golf movie all you want. It's a hockey movie to me. That guy's he's a hockey player playing golf today.
Nice. I actually really liked the Goon movie. I think the first one was kind of the better one. And then if you're looking for a show, Shoresy on, I believe it's on Crave. That's a good one as well.
Brandon Davidson, what are you looking for in the next Sens coach? Now, Brandon, great question. It is also a very important decision making. We just said it's the first priority on Steve Staios' plate, but I really want to wait until the end of the season and even further, probably the end of the first round of the playoffs, before we can put together a full list of candidates. Because you know the ones that are out there. It's the Berube, the Evison, the Woodcroft, the guys who've all basically been let go from jobs this year, and then John Gruden, who Belleville just smacked around last night. So all good. And then I just know what this guy is. He comments on all of our posts. Watch this. Yep, I knew it. This guy's a complete joke.
To answer Brandon's question, I think there's a couple different avenues the Sens are looking here. They're looking for someone new with fresh ideas. You're John Gruden. They're looking for someone older that has the experience, Stanley Cup pedigree, maybe a Craig Berube. We know Pooley has talked about him before. And then kind of a different route is you're looking at a guy that is still employed right now, maybe a Mike Sullivan if things don't work out in Pittsburgh and they decided to let him go. So those are kind of the directions I'm leaning towards.
And final mailbag question. This one's from the DM. Sean asks, what would you do if Lev Shunov is not available? Do you like Zane Parik or Carter Yakemchuk more?
Definitely, if you're looking at Parik or Yakemchuk, I'm looking at Parik. He's much more talented offensive defenseman, but
they both scored 30 goals this year.
Definitely. Yeah, Yakemchuk's right there, but I just think Parik has a higher ceiling, but Yakemchuk is not a bad decision by any means. So honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with either of them, but based off the research I've done so far and where other scouts have them ranked, it seems like Parik would have the inside edge.
Yakemchuk's got the size and physicality presence there. And Sean throws in, you can't turn down the idea of adding another Chuck to throw off Dean and Gord.
Yeah, Kachuk, Ostapchuk, Yakemchuk.
Yes, get them all. Collect them all. Pilsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Nope. Final thoughts for me is go Sens, go.
Go Sens Go. We'll have the postcast after the game. It'll be Martian and Pilsy. I'm going on day 8 of 8 at the station, coming home, and we're recording tomorrow's LOSP. We'll have a game day preview for Saturday's game against the Montreal Canadiens. We'll be boots on the ground for that. Looking forward to being back at the CTC, especially with you, Pilsy. It's been a while since October that we've been back together. We've both gone on separate trips, but it's going to be an absolute blast. So looking forward to all that. Thank you so much for listening and asking the questions. We'll do another mailbag shortly here, get deeper into some of those questions, because some of the best questions we can't really answer yet. That'll be for right after the season ends. So we do thank you so much for participating in that, watching, listening, subscribing, and being a part of this great community. Make sure to not only leave a comment, but engage with others in the comment section. It all goes a long way to helping the show grow. For today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.